Maya Torres froze mid-step, and the champagne flute on her silver tray started shaking so hard she thought it would shatter. Her eyes locked onto something that shouldn't exist. Around Victoria Sinclair's neck, glowing under the crystal chandeliers of Chicago's most exclusive ballroom, was her dead father's necklace. The Art Nouveau piece with its silver vines and sapphire stones. The crescent moon clasp that clicked in a specific way. The heirloom that vanished the night her father died 5 years ago. The same necklace police told her was probably sold on the black market, never to be seen again. But there it was, on the throat of Chicago's most powerful billionaire. Maya's vision tunneled. The string quartet faded to silence. The hundreds of wealthy guests in their designer gowns disappeared. Only the necklace existed now, catching light with every breath Victoria took, the sapphires glinting like stolen stars against her pale skin. What happens when you see your dead father's most precious possession around a stranger's neck at a ball, where you're just invisible help? Before we dive into this story, if you believe invisible people deserve to be seen, hit that subscribe button. This is a story about courage, and I'll need yours to share it. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Her mind split into two screaming voices. The first voice said, "Walk away, you're seeing things, you're tired from working 3 jobs. You've been obsessing over your father's death for 5 years, and now you're hallucinating." The second voice said, "That's his necklace. You know it is. You memorized every curve of that silver, every facet of those sapphires. You'd know it in the dark." She had maybe 3 seconds to decide whether to speak up or stay silent forever. 3 seconds to choose between destroying her entire life or betraying everything her father stood for. The Palmer House ballroom spun around her. Silk gowns in emerald and ruby red swirled past. Champagne bottles that cost more than her monthly rent popped open, with sounds like tiny celebrations of wealth. Laughter rolled across the marble floors. The kind of laughter that comes easy when you've never worried about rent or medical bills, or whether speaking up will get you fired. Chicago's elite filled every corner of this space. CEOs, politicians, old money families whose names were carved into buildings downtown. And Maya was invisible among them, designed to be, hired to be, a server in a black vest and white shirt, someone to refill glasses and clear plates and never, ever make eye contact or speak unless spoken to. But that necklace made her visible to herself. It pulled her back to her father's small house in Oak Park, to Sunday mornings when he'd show her the necklace and tell her the story of how his grandfather carried it from Spain with nothing else to his name, to the promise that it would be hers someday. The last time she saw it, 1 week before his body was found at the bottom of the museum stairs where he worked. To the police officers who shrugged when she reported it missing, who suggested her father probably sold it for drug money even though he'd never touched drugs in his life, who made her feel crazy for insisting it was stolen. Maya's grandmother was in a nursing home on the south side. The good kind, not the kind where they leave people sitting in their own filth. Maya paid for that. Her catering job paid for that. If she spoke up now, if she accused Victoria Sinclair of wearing stolen property in front of 300 witnesses, she'd be fired before she reached the kitchen. Blacklisted from every catering company in Chicago. Her grandmother would have to move to a state facility. But if she stayed silent, she'd never forgive herself. The clock in her head hit 0. Maya's feet moved before her brain caught up. She weaved through clusters of guests, her serving tray forgotten on a side table. Victoria Sinclair stood near the grand windows, champagne glass in hand, mid-conversation with a silver-haired man Maya recognized from the news as a senator. Victoria wore a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than a car. The necklace sat perfectly against her collarbone, catching light with every gesture she made. "Excuse me." Maya's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Ms. Sinclair?" Victoria didn't turn. The senator's eyes flicked to Maya with mild annoyance, the way you'd look at a fly that landed on your dinner plate. Maya stepped closer, her voice louder now. "Excuse me, Miss Sinclair. That necklace, where did you get it?" The ballroom didn't actually go silent. The string quartet kept playing. Conversations continued in distant corners. But in the immediate circle around Victoria, everything stopped. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. A woman in a red dress actually gasped, her hand flying to her chest like Maya had pulled out a weapon. Victoria Sinclair finally looked at her. Ice blue eyes traveled from Maya's face down to her server's uniform and back up, a journey that somehow made Maya feel like she was being calculated and dismissed in the same instant. "I'm sorry." Victoria's voice was smooth, amused, the tone of someone addressing a confused child. "Did you just interrupt my conversation to ask about my jewelry?" "That necklace," Maya said, and she hated how her voice shook, but she pushed forward anyway. "The Art Nouveau piece with the crescent moon clasp. Where did you get it?" The senator excused himself, backing away like Maya might be contagious. Other guests stepped back too, creating a small circle of empty space around Maya and Victoria. Maya saw two security guards in dark suits moving toward her from across the room. Victoria touched the necklace with one perfectly manicured hand. "This piece has been in my family for generations, dear." Her smile was thin, sharp. "It's a Sinclair heirloom. Now, I believe you have work to do. Perhaps you should return to the kitchen and bring me more champagne." "That's not true." Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "That necklace belonged to my father. It was stolen 5 years ago when he died. It's got a maker's mark on the clasp, the initials JR. It came from Spain in 1889. My great-great-grandfather." Security. Victoria's voice cut through Maya's words like a blade. "This woman is clearly confused. Please escort her out." The two guards reached Maya, each taking an arm. Other servers watched from the edges of the room, their faces carefully blank. Maya saw her supervisor near the kitchen doors, his face red with fury. Her job was already gone. She knew that, but she wasn't done. "Check the clasp," Maya said, louder now, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "There's an engraving. JR. For Jose Rodriguez, the silversmith who made it. There's a tiny dent on the left side from where my father dropped it in 2015. Check it. Prove me wrong." For just a second, something flickered across Victoria's face. Not guilt, not shame, something else. Her hand moved to cover the clasp, her fingers curling around it protectively. The movement was instinctive, automatic. The movement of someone protecting something they know doesn't belong to them. "This is absurd," Victoria said, but her voice had changed. Harder now, less amused. "I don't need to prove anything to you. Security, remove her." Now, the guards pulled Maya toward the exit. She didn't resist, but she kept her eyes on Victoria, and Victoria kept her hand on that clasp, covering it like Maya might reach out and rip it off her neck. Around them, guests whispered behind raised hands. Phones came out, camera flashes sparking. The senator had disappeared. A woman in pearls stared at Maya with something that might have been sympathy or might have been pity. Maya let them drag her toward the doors, but she'd seen what she needed to see. Victoria's fingers white-knuckled around that clasp. Victoria knew something. The question was what? The security guards threw Maya out through the service entrance into the December cold. The heavy door slammed behind her. She stood in the alley, breath coming out in white clouds, her mind spinning backward through 5 years. She was 23 years old again, standing in her father's living room in Oak Park. The small house smelled like his cologne and the empanadas he'd made for Sunday dinner. December sunlight came through the windows. Her father, Miguel Torres, sat on the worn couch, the necklace spread across his palms like he was holding something sacred. "Mija, come here. I want to show you something." Maya sat beside him. The necklace was beautiful. Silver vines twisted into an Art Nouveau pattern. 3 sapphires set like drops of night sky, and that distinctive crescent moon clasp that clicked when closed. Her father's hands trembled slightly as he held it. He was 56 but looked older, worn down by years of working at the Chicago History Museum for wages that barely covered bills. "My grandfather carried this from Spain in 1889, he said. He was 17 years old. He'd worked as an apprentice to a silversmith named Jose Rodriguez. When he left for America, Rodriguez gave him this, said it was payment for 3 years of work and a promise of good fortune. It was the only thing my grandfather owned when he stepped off that boat. He wore it under his shirt for 40 years. Then he gave it to my father. My father gave it to me. And someday, Mija, I'll give it to you. On your wedding day. That's the tradition." Maya touched it carefully. The silver was cool, smooth. It's beautiful, Papa. It's more than beautiful. It's proof. Proof that we came from somewhere, that we built something, that we survived. He turned it over, showing her the clasp. See this? The maker's mark. J.R. Jose Rodriguez. And this little dent? I did that. 2015. Dropped it on the kitchen floor like an idiot. They both laughed. It was a good memory. A warm memory. 1 week later, her father was dead. Maya snapped back to the present, still standing in the freezing alley. She could see it all so clearly now. The phone call from the museum. Her father had fallen down the marble stairs in the East Wing. Accidental death, they said. He'd been working late, cataloging a new donation. Nobody saw it happen. The necklace disappeared that same night. When Maya reported it stolen, the police barely wrote it down. Museum security footage from that hallway was mysteriously corrupted. Her father's supervisor suggested maybe Miguel had sold the necklace for cash and the fall was a suicide. But Maya had seen her father with that necklace 1 week before he died. And now she'd seen it again around Victoria Sinclair's throat. And she'd seen Victoria's hand move to protect that clasp. The same clasp with the JR mark. The same clasp with a dent from 2015. Some things you don't forget. Some things you'd recognize in the dark. Maya stood in the alley behind the Palmer house, her breath forming white clouds in the December air. Her phone buzzed. A text from her supervisor. Don't bother coming back. Ever. You're done in the city. 3 more texts followed from other catering companies. Word traveled fast in Chicago's service industry. She'd been blacklisted in less than 10 minutes. Her hand shook, but not from the cold. Her grandmother's nursing home cost $3,000 a month. Maya had maybe 2 weeks of savings. She'd just destroyed her life for a necklace and a dead man's memory. Hey. A voice came from the service entrance. You okay? Maya turned. Another server stood in the doorway, still in his uniform. Asian guy, maybe mid-30s, with tired eyes that said he'd worked too many double shifts. She recognized him vaguely from other events but didn't know his name. I'm fine, Maya lied. He stepped into the alley, letting the door close behind him. No, you're not. You just accused Victoria Sinclair of wearing stolen property in front of half of Chicago's elite. You're the opposite of fine. Then why are you out here? Because I believe you. He said it quietly, glancing back at the door like someone might be listening. My name's James Chin. I've worked Sinclair events for 7 years, and I've seen things. Maya's heart jumped. What kind of things? James moved closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Last month, Victoria wore a jade bracelet to the Autumn Gala. Intricate carving, dragons and phoenixes. Green jade, so pure it looked like it was glowing. I knew that bracelet. My grandmother described it to me 100 times. It was her mother's, brought from Guangdong in 1923. It disappeared in 1999 after my grandmother worked a private event at Harold Sinclair's estate. She reported it stolen. Police did nothing. She died thinking it was gone forever. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't alone. Did you say anything? She asked. James laughed bitterly. Are you kidding? I've got a wife and 2 kids. I need this job. I've been too scared to say anything for a month. But watching you in there, watching you risk everything. He shook his head. I can't stay quiet anymore. If you're going after Victoria Sinclair, I want to help. I don't even know what going after her means, Maya admitted. I just got fired. I'm broke. I've got no proof except my word against the billionaires. Then we find proof. James pulled out his phone. I've worked enough of these events to know Victoria's patterns. She rotates through her jewelry collection. Different pieces for different galas. I've been taking mental notes for years. Too scared to do anything with the information. But if we work together, if we can prove she's wearing stolen items from multiple families, not just yours, it becomes a pattern, Maya finished. Not one disputed necklace. A collection. Exactly. James glanced at his phone. I need to get back before they notice I'm gone. But meet me tomorrow. Lou Mitchell's Diner on West Jackson, 9 a.m. We'll start going through photos, social media, anything we can find. If Victoria's been wearing stolen heirlooms publicly for years, there's a trail. Maya wanted to say yes immediately, but reality crashed back. I need to find another job. My grandmother. I get it. Believe me, I get it. But think about this. How many other families has Victoria done this to? How many people are out there right now, wearing the memories of someone else's ancestors around their necks like trophies? James's voice hardened. My grandmother died, thinking that bracelet was lost forever. Your father died, and his necklace ended up on the woman who probably had him killed. We can either survive and stay silent, or we can survive and fight back. I'm choosing both. Question is, are you? Maya looked at him, really looked. He was risking his job just by talking to her. His hands trembled slightly, whether from cold or fear she couldn't tell. But he was here. He believed her. After 5 years of police officers dismissing her, of friends saying she needed to let it go, of her own mind sometimes wondering if she'd imagined how important that necklace was, here was someone who said, I believe you. Lou Mitchell's, Maya said. 9 a.m. I'll be there. James nodded and headed back inside. Maya stood alone in the alley again, but something had changed. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. $2,347. Enough for rent and her grandmother's care for maybe 3 weeks, if she stretched it. Not enough to hire a lawyer. Not enough to fight a billionaire. But enough to start asking questions. Enough to refuse to stay silent. Her father had died for whatever truth he discovered. The least Maya could do was find out what that truth was, even if it destroyed her in the process. She chose both, survival and justice, or she died trying. Lou Mitchell's diner smelled like coffee and bacon grease. Maya slid into a booth across from James, who already had his laptop open and 3 folders of printed photos spread across the table. Dark circles hung under his eyes. Did you sleep at all? Maya asked. Couldn't. Once I started looking, I couldn't stop. James turned his laptop screen toward her. Look at this. The screen showed a photo from a charity gala 3 years ago. Victoria Sinclair stood with the mayor, wearing a red gown and an ornate cameo brooch pinned to her shoulder. The cameo showed a woman's profile carved in white against a coral background, surrounded by gold filigree. Okay, Maya said. Nice brooch. So what? James pulled up another window. This is a police report from 2018. Maria Giordano, a restroom attendant at the Art Institute, reported a family heirloom stolen after working a private Sinclair Foundation event. Her great-grandmother's cameo brooch, Italian, made in Naples in 1890. Coral and gold. Maria gave a detailed description. He pointed to the police report. Read it. Maya read. The description matched the brooch in the photo exactly, down to a small chip on the upper left edge of the gold frame. That's the same brooch, Maya breathed. That's one. James clicked to another photo. Victoria at a museum opening, wearing an elaborate Celtic ring on her right hand. This is from last year. Now look at this. Another police report, this one from 2017. Kevin O'Brien, museum security guard, reported his grandmother's Celtic wedding ring stolen after the museum hosted a Sinclair Foundation donor dinner. The ring was a family heirloom from County Cork, Ireland. The description matched. James kept clicking. Photo after photo. Police report after police report. A jade bracelet. A silver Mexican necklace with turquoise inlay. An enamel Russian pendant. A beaded Native American bracelet. Ethiopian silver earrings. Each piece appeared on Victoria at various galas over the past 15 years. Each piece matched a police report for a stolen heirloom belonging to a museum employee, catering staff member, janitor, or security guard who'd worked a Sinclair event. Maya's hand went cold. How many pieces total? 12 that I can confirm with police reports and clear photos. But I found references to at least 20 more thefts that match the pattern. People who worked Sinclair events and reported family heirlooms missing afterward. The police reports go back to 1997. 1997, Maya repeated. That's almost 30 years. Yeah, and look at this. James pulled out a printout. Harold Sinclair, Victoria's father, served on the board of the Chicago History Museum from 1995 to 2019. He also sat on the boards of the Art Institute, the Field Museum, and 3 private collections. Every single theft victim worked at one of those institutions or worked events at Sinclair Properties. Maya stared at the spreadsheet James had created. Names, dates, items, locations. The pattern was undeniable. This isn't just Victoria. Her father started this. And she continued it. James tapped the most recent entry. Harold Sinclair died in 2020. But the thefts didn't stop. There are 4 confirmed cases since his death. Victoria inherited more than his money. She inherited his hobby. Maya felt sick. Why would they do this? They're billionaires. They could buy any jewelry they want. Why steal from people who have nothing? James was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about that all night. It's not about the money. It's about power. Think about it. These aren't random pieces. They're heirlooms, things people carried across oceans. The last physical connection to their ancestors. Things that can't be replaced. He met Maya's eyes. Taking them isn't just theft. It's erasure. It's telling people like us that even our memories, even our family histories belong to them if they want them. The diner sounds faded. Maya heard her father's voice. It's proof. Proof that we came from somewhere. That we built something. That we survived. We need to go to the police with this, Maya said. This is evidence. 12 cases, maybe more. They can't ignore pattern. James closed his laptop slowly. Maya, every single one of these police reports was filed. Every single one was investigated. And every single one was closed with no charges filed. The cops talked to the victims, took their statements, and did nothing. Some of these people were told they'd probably lost the items themselves. Others were told there wasn't enough evidence. One woman was investigated for insurance fraud after she reported her grandmother's ring stolen. But now we have photos. We have proof Victoria's wearing the stolen items. We have circumstantial evidence. Victoria will say these are different pieces that just happen to look similar, or that she bought them legally, or that they've been in her family for generations. Just like she said about your necklace. And who's going to believe us? A fired catering server and a guy who washes dishes at fancy parties? Or Victoria Sinclair, billionaire philanthropist, with 20 lawyers on retainer? Maya wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. The system had already failed these families once. Why would it work now? So what do we do? She asked. James opened one of his folders and pulled out a photo. It showed Harold Sinclair at a museum gala in 2005, standing next to a thin Asian woman in a server's uniform. We find the people who know what really happened, the people who were there, the witnesses the police never bothered to interview. He tapped the woman's face, starting with her. The story of Victoria Sinclair began long before she wore stolen jewelry to galas. It began in 1968 in a sprawling estate in Lincoln Park, where a 6-year-old girl learned her first lesson about power. Harold Sinclair stood in his study, a room lined with dark wood and leather, teaching his daughter the family business. Not the official business of real estate development and property management. The real business. The business of taking. Come here, Victoria. Harold waved her over to his desk, where a jade figurine sat on display. You see this? A museum curator's wife owned this. Chinese Ming Dynasty, worth maybe $50,000. She brought it to our New Year's party, wore it on a chain around her neck, showed it to everyone, told the story of how her grandmother carried it from Shanghai in 1949. 6-year-old Victoria touched the jade carefully. It's pretty. It's more than pretty. It's leverage. Harold picked up the figurine, turned it in the light. The curator wanted his contract renewed. I told him I admired his wife's necklace. He got nervous, said it was a family heirloom. I said I collect Asian art, that I'd pay top dollar. He said it wasn't for sale. So I waited. Harold smiled. 3 months later, the wife reported it stolen after working a charity event at our house. Police investigated. Found nothing. And the curator? He stopped asking for a raise. Stayed quiet. Kept his job. Everyone won. But the lady lost her necklace, Victoria said. Harold set the jade down and looked at his daughter with those ice blue eyes she'd inherited. Victoria listened carefully. There are 2 kinds of people in this world. People who take, and people who get taken from. Winners and losers. Predators and prey. You and I, we're Sinclairs. We're predators. Those people out there. The ones who serve our food and clean our houses and beg for their jobs. They're resource pools. They exist to provide what we need. What if they don't want to give it? Then we take it anyway. That's what power means. The ability to take what you want and face no consequences. Harold opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a black velvet box. Inside were 20 pieces of jewelry, each one wrapped carefully. I started this collection in 1970. Every piece tells a story. Every piece belonged to someone who thought they could tell me no. Immigrants, poor people, working class families who didn't speak English well, who feared deportation, who needed their jobs more than they needed their pride. Victoria stared at the collection. Even at 6 years old, she understood what she was seeing. Trophies, proof of conquest. Why them, she asked. Why not rich people? Harold laughed. Because rich people fight back. They have lawyers, connections, power of their own. But these people, he waved his hand dismissively. They can't fight back. Police don't care about them. The system isn't built to protect them. They are invisible, which makes them perfect targets. That lesson stuck. As Victoria grew up, her father taught her more. How to identify valuable items at parties. How to create opportunities for theft. How to use wealth and influence to make investigations disappear. How to hire security firms that would look the other way. How to threaten people's jobs, their immigration status, their families. By the time Victoria was 16, she'd helped her father acquire 7 new pieces for the collection. By 25, she was running the operation herself. But it wasn't just about the jewelry. It was about what the jewelry represented. Victoria had grown up watching her father dominate Chicago's elite circles, watching senators ask for his approval, watching museum directors kiss his ring, watching the invisible people serve and smile and disappear. She learned that power wasn't just about money. It was about the ability to take whatever you wanted from whoever you wanted and suffer no consequences. The heirlooms became her obsession. Each piece was a victory. Each theft was proof that she was a predator, not prey. That she was a Sinclair, not one of the invisible masses who existed only to serve her family's needs. She developed specific tastes. She liked pieces with stories. Necklaces carried across oceans by immigrants fleeing poverty. Rings passed down through generations of working-class families. Bracelets that represented someone's last connection to a homeland they'd never see again. The more meaningful the piece was to its owner, the more Victoria wanted it. Because taking it proved her power, absolutely. Harold died in 2020, leaving Victoria everything. The real estate empire, the political connections, the museum board positions, and the collection. 50 pieces of stolen history, each one locked in a climate-controlled vault in her penthouse. She wore them publicly, openly, because she could. Because no one would question a Sinclair. Because she was untouchable. But there was something Harold never told her. Something she discovered only after going through his papers following his death. Harold Sinclair wasn't just a thief. He was a murderer. 3 people had died after threatening to expose his collection. One fell down museum stairs in 2020. Miguel Torres, a curator who'd found evidence of Harold's forgery scheme. Another died in a car accident in 2015. A security guard who'd tried to blackmail Harold. A third simply disappeared in 1998. A housekeeper who'd witnessed Harold switching real artifacts with fakes. Victoria found the records, the payoffs to police, the arrangements with private investigators, the threats carefully documented. Her father hadn't just taught her to steal. He'd taught her that human life was disposable when it stood between a Sinclair and what they wanted. And Victoria? She didn't recoil in horror. She didn't question her father's methods. Instead, she felt something else. Pride. Her father had done whatever necessary to protect the family legacy. So would she. When Maya Torres accused her of wearing a stolen necklace, Victoria's first instinct wasn't guilt. It was calculation. This girl was a threat, just like her father had been a threat. And Victoria had inherited her father's playbook for dealing with threats. She wasn't evil. She genuinely believed she had every right to those heirlooms. In her mind, her family's superiority entitled them to whatever they wanted. The working-class families who'd lost their treasures were simply losers in the eternal game of predator and prey. But she was dangerous, and she wouldn't stop until the threat was eliminated. Maya sat across from attorney Richard Brennan in his downtown office, hoping this would be different from the first 3 lawyers who turned her away. Brennan was James's cousin, supposedly sympathetic to working-class cases. He listened to Maya's story, examined the photos and police reports James had compiled, and then leaned back in his leather chair. "It's compelling," Brennan said. "But here's the problem. To take this to court, I'd need to prove Victoria Sinclair knowingly possesses stolen property. The photos show she's wearing jewelry that looks similar to stolen items. But similar isn't identical. Victoria will claim these are different pieces, or that she bought them legally from dealers, or that they've been in her family. Without the actual items in hand for expert examination, we can't prove anything." "What about all the police reports?" Maya asked. 12 families, all working Sinclair events, all reporting Heirloom stolen? Circumstantial. And frankly, given the Sinclair family's influence in Chicago, no prosecutor is going to touch this without airtight evidence. Which brings me to my fee. Brennan slid a paper across his desk. $50,000 retainer. That covers initial investigation, expert witnesses, and maybe the first court filings. A full trial against the Sinclair legal team? You're looking at $500,000 minimum. Maya stared at the number. She had $2,000 in her bank account. "I don't have that kind of money." "I know. I'm sorry, Miss Torres. I wish I could help." Brennan stood, signaling the meeting was over. "My advice? Let it go. The Sinclairs always win." Maya walked out into the cold Chicago afternoon, feeling crushed. James was waiting outside. "No luck?" he asked, reading her face. $50,000 just to start. He said we'd lose anyway." Maya pulled her coat tighter. "What about the police? Can we file a report together? Multiple victims presenting as a group?" They tried. The detective at the Chicago Police Department's theft division listened with barely concealed boredom. When Maya finished explaining the pattern, Detective Shaw set down his pen. "Let me get this straight. You want me to investigate Victoria Sinclair, one of Chicago's biggest philanthropists, for allegedly wearing jewelry that might be similar to items reported stolen years ago?" "Not similar. Identical. We have photos." "You have photos that show jewelry. You don't have proof those specific items are the same ones reported stolen. You don't have serial numbers, expert authentication, nothing. And most of these reports are years old, cases already closed." Shaw leaned forward. "Ms. Torres, between you and me, Victoria Sinclair donates $2 million a year to the Chicago Police Foundation. The mayor goes to her galas. Half the city council owes her favors. You're asking me to end my career by going after someone untouchable based on evidence that wouldn't survive a preliminary hearing. So she can just keep stealing because she's rich? I'm saying the system works differently for different people. That's reality. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual cases to work." Shaw stood, opened his office door. "And Ms. Torres? Maybe don't go around making wild accusations. Defamation lawsuits are expensive." The local news was no better. Maya contacted 3 stations. One didn't respond. Another sent a junior reporter who seemed interested until his editor killed the story. The third told her explicitly, "We're not touching anything involving the Sinclair family without proof so solid it's bulletproof. They advertise with us. They fund our special programming. And they have lawyers who love making media companies bleed." Maya felt the walls closing in. Every door slammed in her face. Every authority figure dismissed her. And then Victoria's counterattack began. It started with social media. Someone created a fake Facebook account in Maya's name and posted rambling accusations about wealthy families, conspiracy theories about immigrant persecution, and threats against Victoria Sinclair. The account claimed Maya had been stealing from previous employers, that she was mentally unstable, that she'd been fired from multiple jobs for erratic behavior. None of it was true, but it spread. Screenshots circulated in Chicago catering industry groups. Maya received emails from former colleagues asking if she was okay, if she needed psychiatric help. Her supervisor from the Palmer House posted a warning. "This woman is unstable and made false accusations. Do not hire." Then her landlord called. Someone had filed a complaint about noise, threats, suspicious activity in her apartment. The landlord was polite but firm. "I need you out by the end of the month. I'll keep your security deposit to cover damages." "What damages?" "I haven't damaged anything. The complaint says otherwise. Look, I don't want trouble. Just leave quietly and we'll call it even." Maya knew exactly what was happening. Victoria Sinclair was systematically destroying her life, using money and influence to erase her, discredit her, make her disappear, the same way her father had done to dozens of victims before. James tried to help. He posted on community forums, shared the real evidence, defended Maya's character. But Victoria's machine was too efficient. Within a week, James received a visit at work from his supervisor. "I heard you've been helping that woman who caused a scene at the Palmer house, the one making accusations against Victoria Sinclair. I'm helping expose a pattern of theft. You're risking your job. The Sinclair Foundation is one of our biggest clients. If you keep associating with this woman, if you keep spreading these accusations, I'll have to let you go. I've got a family to consider. I'm sorry." That night, Maya and James sat in her apartment, surrounded by folders and printouts in a case that was crumbling before it could begin. No lawyers, no police support, no media attention. Just two people against a machine designed to crush them. "Maybe we should stop," James said quietly. "I've got kids. You've got your grandmother. We tried. We failed. Maybe that's just how the world works." Maya looked at the photo of her father on her wall. Miguel Torres, smiling in his museum uniform, proud of his work, proud of his family, proud of the heirloom he'd promised to pass down. "No," she said. "Victoria wants us to quit. That's her strategy. Isolate us, discredit us, make us too afraid to keep fighting. But if we quit now, everyone who comes after us will quit too. Someone has to be willing to burn for the truth. Burning sounds painful. It is, but my father burned, and I'm not letting his death mean nothing." James was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, so what's next?" "Next we find someone Victoria can't silence. Someone who saw the truth and has been carrying it for years. Someone whose testimony is worth more than money." Maya opened her laptop. "We find the witnesses." The email came at 2 in the morning. Maya was still awake, scrolling through old museum employee records, when her laptop pinged. The sender was anonymous. The subject line just 2 words. "I know." Maya's hand trembled as she opened it. "My name is Margaret Wu. I'm 73 years old and dying of cancer. I worked at the Chicago History Museum from 1995 to 2010. I saw Harold Sinclair steal artifacts and threaten people who spoke up. I saw him replace real items with forgeries and keep the originals for his private collection. I saw him destroy lives, and I stayed silent because I was afraid. But I'm not afraid anymore. I saw your story shared in the immigrant community networks. I believe you. I can help you. Please call me." A phone number followed. Maya called immediately. The phone rang 4 times before a weak voice answered. "Hello, Ms. Wu? This is Maya Torres. I just got your email. I know who you are. I've been following your situation for the past week. The social media attacks, the blacklisting, all of it. It's exactly what Harold did to anyone who threatened him." Margaret coughed, the sound wet and painful. "I'm in hospice care at Northwestern Memorial. Stage 4 lung cancer. The doctors say I have maybe 3 months. I've spent 27 years staying silent because I was afraid of what the Sinclairs would do to me, to my family. But I'm dying anyway. Fear seems stupid now." Maya's heart pounded. "What did you see?" "Everything. I worked the museum's special events department from 1995 to 2010. I coordinated private tours, handled artifact loans, managed donor receptions. Harold Sinclair was on our board, and he had access to everything. Storage rooms, archives, private collections. And he used that access to steal." Margaret's voice grew stronger as she talked, like she'd been waiting years to tell the story. "He had a system. First, he'd identify valuable items owned by museum employees, jewelry they wore to work, heirlooms they mentioned in casual conversation, pieces they brought to show and tell events we held for staff. Then he'd arrange for those employees to work private events at his properties. Sinclair Foundation dinners, charity galas, fundraisers at his estate. The employees would serve food, 10-bar, work security, and their heirlooms would disappear." "Did you report it?" Maya asked. "I tried. In 1998, a janitor named Carlos Mendez reported his mother's silver rosary stolen after working a Sinclair event. I went to museum management, told them we had a pattern of thefts connected to Sinclair functions. They told me to drop it. Said Harold was the museum's biggest donor. That accusations, without proof, would destroy the museum's funding. When I pushed harder, they suggested I was confused, maybe experiencing early dementia. Margaret laughed bitterly. I was 51 years old, perfectly healthy. But they needed me to be crazy more than they needed me to be right. What about the police? I filed a report. The detective assigned to the case called me once, took my statement over the phone, and I never heard from him again. 6 months later, I saw that same detective at a Sinclair Foundation fundraiser, laughing with Harold like they were old friends. Margaret coughed again. That's when I understood. The Sinclairs didn't just have money. They had the whole system. Police, museum officials, city government. All of them in Harold's pocket. Maya felt sick, so you stayed quiet. Not just quiet. I helped. God help me, I helped. Margaret's voice broke. Harold threatened my family. My daughter was in college. My husband had just gotten his green card. Harold said one word from him could destroy us. Get my husband deported. Get my daughter blacklisted from every university. He showed me he had the power to do it. So I stayed silent. And worse, I helped arrange the events where the theft happened. I sent the invitations. I assigned the staff. I was complicit. You were a victim too, Maya said. Was I? Or was I a coward? Margaret was crying now. I watched Harold steal from dozens of families. Watched him replace museum artifacts with forgeries, keeping the real ones for his collection. And I did nothing. Even after he died, I stayed quiet. Until I saw your story and realized his daughter is doing the same thing. The theft didn't end with Harold. It just changed hands. Maya gripped the phone tighter. Ms. Wu, I need you to tell me something. Did you ever hear Harold Sinclair mention my father, Miguel Torres? He was a curator at the museum. Died in 2020. The silence on the other end lasted. So long Maya thought the call had dropped. Then Margaret spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Your father is why he contacted you. Miguel Torres was the bravest person I ever met. He found the forgeries, documented everything. Harold's thefts, the fake artifacts, the bribed officials, all of it. Miguel came to me in December 2020, showed me his evidence, asked me to testify, and I was too afraid. I told him I couldn't help. 2 weeks later, he was dead. They said it was an accidental fall. It wasn't, was it? No, Harold ordered it. I know because Harold's assistant called me the day after your father died, told me it was a tragedy, such an accident. And wasn't it lucky I'd chosen not to get involved with Miguel's paranoid conspiracy theories? That was a warning. Stay silent or die. Maya couldn't breathe. Everything she'd suspected, everything she fought to prove, was true. Her father hadn't fallen. He'd been murdered. And the woman who'd inherited his killer's empire was wearing his necklace like a trophy. Ms. Wu, will you testify? Will you go on record? I'm dying, Maya. They can't threaten me anymore. Yes, I'll testify. I'll tell everything I know. But you need to understand something. Victoria Sinclair is Harold's daughter in every way that matters. She knows what her father did. She's seen the evidence. And she's chosen to continue his work. That makes her dangerous in ways Harold never was. Because she's not just a thief. She's a true believer. Margaret Wu's hospice room smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers. Maya and James sat beside her bed while Margaret pulled out a worn leather folder from her bedside table. Her hands shook as she opened it. Before we talk about what Harold did, you need to understand where it started, the real beginning. Margaret coughed, took a sip of water. Maya, what do you know about your great-grandfather? Just what my father told me. He came from Spain in 1889, worked as a silversmith's apprentice, immigrated with nothing but that necklace. That's true, but it's not the whole truth. Margaret pulled out a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1889, the Chicago Tribune, business section. Your great-grandfather's name was Diego Rodriguez, right? Right. He didn't come to Chicago alone. He came with a business partner, a young man he'd met in New York, someone with money and connections, someone who promised to help Diego establish himself in America. Margaret pointed to the newspaper. Read the headline. Maya read aloud. New real estate partnership promises transformation of Chicago West Side. Diego Rodriguez and Harold Sinclair Sr. announced joint venture. The room went silent. James leaned forward. Wait, Harold Sinclair? As in Victoria's great-grandfather, Margaret confirmed. Same name, same family. Diego Rodriguez and Harold Sinclair Sr. were business partners. Best friends, according to the records. They pooled their resources in 1889 to buy and develop properties in what's now Lincoln Park. Diego provided the labor connections through the immigrant community. Harold provided the capital and legal framework. Maya felt like the floor was tilting. My father never mentioned this, because the partnership didn't last. Margaret pulled out more documents. Property deeds, contracts, court filings. In 1891, 2 years after they started, Harold Sinclair Sr. claimed Diego had stolen from the partnership funds. He produced forged documents showing Diego taking money. He filed criminal charges. Diego was arrested. This can't be right, Maya whispered. It gets worse. Diego couldn't afford a lawyer. He barely spoke English. The court case was a sham. Harold's lawyers destroyed him. Diego was convicted of embezzlement and sentenced to 2 years in prison. While he was locked up, Harold seized full control of the partnership using the legal documents they'd signed. When Diego was released in 1893, Harold owned everything. The properties, the business, the future they'd built together. All of it was now Sinclair property. Margaret showed Maya a property deed. Your great-grandfather was left with nothing. No money, no reputation, criminal record, couldn't find work. The necklace you're fighting for? That wasn't just an heirloom. It was collateral for their first property deal. When they formed the partnership, Diego put up the necklace as a share of the initial investment. It was supposed to be returned once the business was profitable. Harold never gave it back. Maya couldn't speak. Her entire family history was rewriting itself in front of her eyes. Diego died in 1902, broken and poor. But before he died, he told his son everything. And that son told his son, and eventually your father knew. The necklace wasn't just stolen by Victoria. It was stolen from your family 133 years ago, by her family. Everything the Sinclairs have, everything they built, started with the betrayal and theft of your great-grandfather's partnership. James broke the silence. So Victoria wearing that necklace isn't random. She knows what it represents. Oh, she knows, Margaret said. Harold Sinclair, Victoria's father, the one I worked with, told me once while drunk at a museum gala. He said his family had been taking from the Rodriguez line for 4 generations. Called it maintaining the natural order. Said Diego Rodriguez had been too trusting, too naive, and that's why he deserved to lose everything. Harold genuinely believed his family's willingness to betray made them superior. Maya's hands clenched into fists. So when my father discovered Harold's thefts at the museum, Harold didn't just see a threat. He saw history repeating. Another Rodriguez trying to challenge a Sinclair. Exactly. That's why Harold had your father killed. It wasn't just about protecting his collection. It was personal, generational. The idea that a Rodriguez might bring down a Sinclair was intolerable to him. And Victoria, Margaret pulled out one final document, a letter handwritten, dated 2019. This is from Harold to Victoria, written a year before he died. I found it in files Harold left at the museum. Read it. Maya read aloud, her voice shaking. Victoria, my dear daughter, our family's greatness was built on understanding that power belongs to those willing to take it. Your great-great-grandfather understood this when he took what was rightfully his from that fool, Rodriguez. I have continued this tradition, collecting the treasures of those too weak to defend them. When I'm gone, this legacy falls to you. Protect the collection. Protect our name. Remember, we are Sinclairs. We take, we keep, and we never apologize. The Rodriguez bloodline has tried twice now to challenge us. Once in 1891, again in 2020. Both times we've won. If they try again, you'll win too. Never forget what we are. Predators, not prey. Maya set the letter down. Her whole body shook with rage and grief and something else. Complexity. Moral ambiguity. Because her great-grandfather had trusted a monster and paid for it. Her family had suffered across 4 generations because Diego Rodriguez had been too naive, too trusting, too kind. Did that make the Sinclairs right? No, but it made Maya's family complicit in their own destruction in a way she hadn't expected. I don't know what to do with this, Maya admitted. Part of me wants to say my great-grandfather was a victim, and that's all that matters. But another part wonders if he should have seen the betrayal coming, if he should have protected himself better. Does that make this quest for justice or just generational revenge? Both, James said quietly. It can be both. Your family was victimized. That's true, and you're seeking justice for that. The fact that your ancestor made mistakes doesn't invalidate the crimes committed against him. People aren't required to be perfect victims to deserve justice. Margaret nodded. What matters is what you do now. You can use this information to destroy Victoria the way her family destroyed yours, complete annihilation. Or you can use it to seek genuine justice, exposure, accountability, restoration. One path makes you like them. The other makes you better than them. Maya looked at the necklace photo on her phone. For generations of theft, for generations of silence. The choice of what came next was hers, and it was heavier than she'd ever imagined. Margaret reached under her pillow and pulled out a small brass key. Your father gave me this 3 days before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I should give it to his daughter. I was too afraid at the time. I hid it, but you're here now and I'm dying, and fear seems like a waste of time. Maya took the key. It was warm from Margaret's body heat, old brass worn smooth. A tag attached read, Secure Space Storage, Unit 247 Milwaukee Avenue. What's in it? Maya asked. Everything. Your father spent 2 years documenting Harold Sinclair's crimes. He was meticulous, obsessive. He knew he'd only get one chance to expose the truth. So he gathered evidence like his life depended on it. Margaret's face darkened. It did depend on it. He just didn't move fast enough. 2 hours later, Maya and James stood in front of Storage Unit 247. The facility was in a rundown part of Chicago, the kind of place you paid cash and didn't ask questions. Maya's hands shook as she turned the key. The unit door rolled up, revealing a small space packed with boxes, filing cabinets, and plastic bins. James whistled low. Your dad was serious. They spent the next 6 hours going through everything. What they found was staggering. Box 1 contained photographs. Hundreds of them. Harold Sinclair at museum galas, wearing jewelry that appeared in police reports. Close-ups of specific pieces with detailed notes about their origins. Photos of museum artifacts with corresponding photos of forgeries. The differences highlighted and annotated. Pictures of Harold meeting with known black market art dealers. Images of bank transfers and mysterious payments. Box 2 held receipts and financial records. Payments from Harold to private investigators. Cash withdrawals before and after events where thefts occurred. Receipts from forgers who specialized in replicating museum-quality artifacts. Bank records showing Harold paying off police officers, museum officials, and city inspectors. Box 3 contained provenance documents for 53 stolen heirlooms. Miguel Torres had tracked down the original families, interviewed survivors, documented the cultural and historical significance of each piece. Mexican silver crosses, Chinese jade dragons, Italian cameos, Irish Celtic jewelry, Ethiopian Orthodox crosses, Native American beadwork. Each item had a file, original owner's name, family history, police report number, date and location of theft, and evidence linking it to the Sinclair collection. The Box 4 made Maya's heart stop. It contained recorded conversations. Miguel had worn a wire to meetings with Harold Sinclair. 37 hours of audio on digital files, each one carefully labeled and transcribed. Maya plugged in her laptop and started listening. Harold's voice came through tinny but clear. Miguel, I admire your dedication to authenticity, but you need to understand that museums aren't about truth. They're about narrative control. The people who fund us get to decide which stories are told and which objects are worthy of display. Your job is to support that narrative, not challenge it. Miguel's voice younger but recognizable. I found discrepancies in the provenance documents for the pre-Columbian collection. These pieces aren't authentic. They're extremely well-made forgeries. Are you calling me a liar? I'm saying someone switched the real artifacts for fakes. And I'm saying the museum board needs to know. A long pause. Then Harold, his voice colder. Miguel, How old is your daughter now? Maya, right? Such a sweet girl. Would be a shame if something happened to her. If someone made a call to child services, reported neglect, or if someone arranged for your wife to have an accident. These things happen to people who don't understand their place. Maya's vision blurred. She heard her father's voice shake. Are you threatening my family? I'm explaining reality. You're a curator. I'm a board chairman with 40 years of connections in this city. You make noise about forgeries. You don't just lose your job. You lose everything. Your reputation, your family, your future. Is your commitment to authenticity worth that price? The recording ended. The next file was dated a week later. Miguel's voice again, but this time he was alone, recording notes to himself. I can't let this go. Harold Sinclair has stolen over 50 cultural artifacts from museum employees and their families. He's replaced museum pieces with forgeries and kept the originals. He's built his entire collection on theft, fraud, and intimidation. I have enough evidence to bring him down, but I need someone with authority to listen. Margaret Wu is too afraid. Museum administration is compromised. I'm taking this to the FBI. If anything happens to me, this storage unit contains everything needed to prosecute. Maya, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I have to risk everything for this. But some truths are too important to bury. I love you, Mija. Be strong. Be brave. Finish what I started. Maya couldn't breathe. Tears streamed down her face. James put a hand on her shoulder, but said nothing. The last box contained something Maya didn't expect. A letter from her mother. The envelope was addressed to Miguel, dated 2 weeks before his death. Inside, Maya found a handwritten confession. Miguel, I'm so sorry. Harold Sinclair came to me 3 months ago. He offered me $100,000 to leave you and Maya and never contact you again. He said if I refused, he'd have you killed and make Maya disappear into the foster system. I didn't believe him at first. Then he showed me photographs of our house, Maya's school, your daily route to work. He showed me police reports he'd falsified, child abuse allegations he was prepared to file. He proved he could destroy us. So I took the money. I left. I've been in Portland using a different name, sending anonymous money orders to help with Maya's expenses. I thought leaving would protect you both. Now you tell me you're going after him anyway, exposing his crimes. Miguel, please don't. He'll kill you. He's killed before. Please just let it go. Take Maya and run. I'll meet you wherever you want. We can start over. But please don't fight him. Please. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The letter was dated December 3rd, 2020. Miguel Torres died December 15th, 2020. Maya looked up at James. My mother didn't abandon us. She was trying to save us, and my father knew it. He knew Sinclair had threatened her. He knew the danger, and he went after Sinclair anyway. Because some fights are worth dying for, James said quietly. Maya stood up in that storage unit surrounded by 5 years of her father's work, evidence of generational theft, proof of murder, and the truth about her mother. She had everything she needed now. Photographs, recordings, documents, provenance records. 53 families destroyed, multiple murders, a conspiracy spanning 4 generations. We have leverage now, Maya said. We can destroy Victoria Sinclair completely, not just expose her thefts. We can dismantle the entire Sinclair empire, prove they built everything on fraud and murder going back to 1891. We have the power to annihilate them. James looked at her carefully. Is that what you want? Annihilation? Maya thought about her great-grandfather dying penniless, her father dying at the bottom of museum stairs, her mother hiding in Portland for 5 years, too terrified to come home, for generations of Sinclair predation, for generations of Rodriguez suffering. I don't know yet, Maya admitted, but I know I'm done being prey, one way or another. The Sinclairs are going to answer for what they've done. Maya spent the next 3 days digitizing everything in the storage unit. Thousands of pages, hours of audio, hundreds of photographs. And hidden in her father's research, she found something that changed everything. It was a DNA test, not her father's, Harold Sinclair's. The document was dated 1987, attached to a memo from a private investigator. Maya read it twice, then a third time, not quite believing what she was seeing. Harold Sinclair was not Victoria's biological father. According to the DNA analysis, Victoria's mother, Catherine Sinclair, had had an affair with the family's housekeeper's husband, a man named Javier Reyes, Mexican immigrant, worked as a gardener on the Sinclair estate. The affair lasted 6 months in 1985. Victoria was born in 1986. The investigators' notes were clinical. Subject Catherine Sinclair became pregnant during affair with subject Javier Reyes. DNA test confirms Reyes' paternity. Harold Sinclair aware of infidelity. Harold chose to raise child as his own to avoid divorce scandal. Catherine died in car accident 1995. See separate file re. Circumstances. Javier Reyes and wife deported to Mexico 1990 under arrangement with ICE. See file 45B for payment records. Harold has raised Victoria with no knowledge of her true parentage. Subject Victoria believes herself to be Harold's biological daughter and Sinclair family heir. Maya found additional files, medical records, birth certificates with falsified information, payoff records to doctors and hospital staff. Even more damning, a letter from Harold to his lawyer, dated 2015. Victoria must never know the truth about her parentage. Her value to the Sinclair name depends on her believing she is my daughter. If she discovers her father was a Mexican gardener, everything I built into her will collapse. She is already obsessed with proving herself worthy of the Sinclair legacy. If she learns she has no biological claim to it, she'd be destroyed. Use this information only in emergency. It's the nuclear option. Maya sat back, processing. Victoria's entire identity was built on a lie. Her obsession with the stolen heirlooms made sense now. She was trying to prove she belonged to the upper class, that she was truly a Sinclair, even though genetically she was the daughter of the exact kind of working-class immigrant the Sinclairs preyed upon. James looked over Maya's shoulder at the documents. This is her vulnerability. Harold knew it. That's why he documented it so carefully. She fears losing social status more than anything, Maya said slowly. That's why she continues the thefts. The collection isn't about greed. It's about proving she belongs. Every stolen heirloom is evidence she's a true Sinclair, that she has the right to take from people like her real father. Margaret called that evening. Maya explained what she'd found in the DNA records. I remember when Catherine Sinclair died, Margaret said. 1995. Car accident, they said. But there were rumors. Harold's mechanic quit suddenly, moved out of state with a lot of money. Harold controlled the investigation. Some people thought he'd arranged it. So Harold killed his wife for having an affair, deported the real father, and raised Victoria as his own while holding the secret over her. Not over her. Harold never told Victoria. He kept it as insurance, control. If Victoria ever disobeyed him, he could destroy her identity with one revelation. Margaret coughed. That's what predators do. They don't just hurt you. They make sure you can never escape. Maya stared at the DNA report. This was power, real power. If she released this information publicly, Victoria's entire social standing would collapse. The Chicago elite would turn on her instantly, not because they cared about her crimes, but because she wasn't really one of them. She was the daughter of a Mexican gardener pretending to be a Sinclair. It would destroy Victoria more completely than any criminal prosecution. James saw Maya's face. You're thinking about using it, aren't you? This is exactly what we need. Victoria's untouchable because of her name and status. But if we prove she's not really Sinclair, that protection disappears. The same people who shield her now will abandon her by exposing something that's not her fault. She didn't choose her parents. She doesn't know the truth. Using this makes us like Harold. It's weaponizing someone's heritage against them. Maya's hands trembled. Her heritage is the same as the families she's been stealing from. Mexican immigrant working class. And she spent her whole life stealing from people like her real father. There's justice in that revelation. There's cruelty in it too. James met her eyes. We have evidence of actual crimes. Theft, fraud, murder. We can prove she's a criminal. We don't need to prove she's not a real Sinclair. That's fighting racism with racism. The criminal evidence hasn't worked. Lawyers won't help. Police won't help. The system protects her because of her name. Taking away that name is the only way to win. or it's the way to become like the people who destroyed your family. James pulled up the photo of Maya's great-grandfather. Diego Rodriguez was betrayed because Harold Sinclair believed some people deserved everything and others deserved nothing based on where they came from. If you use Victoria's parentage against her, you're saying the same thing. That being Mexican makes you less valuable. That immigrant blood disqualifies you from respect. Maya wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Using Victoria's true heritage as a weapon would validate everything the Sinclairs believed. It would say that being the daughter of Javier Reyes was shameful, that Mexican blood was a stain to be exposed and ridiculed. So what do? Just ignore this information? No, you acknowledge what it tells us about Victoria. She's a victim too, raised by a monster, fed lies about her identity, trained to hate people like her real father. That doesn't excuse her crimes, but it explains them, and maybe. James hesitated. Maybe it gives us a different approach. What approach? What if we tell her the truth before we expose her crimes? Show her who she really is. Give her a chance to choose. Does she want to keep being Harold's daughter, the predator he trained her to be? Or does she want to know her real father, acknowledge her actual heritage, and maybe find a different path? Maya laughed bitterly. You think Victoria Sinclair is going to suddenly develop a conscience because we tell her she's half Mexican? No. I think Victoria Sinclair might crack when she realizes everything she's built her identity on is a lie. And in that moment of crisis, she might be vulnerable to actual change. Or she might double down and prove she's Harold's daughter in every way that matters, even if not biologically. James shrugged. Either way, we'll know who we're really dealing with. Maya looked at the DNA report again. 2 paths forward. 1 path. Release this publicly, destroy Victoria's status. Watch Chicago's elite devour her. Win through annihilation. The other path. Confront Victoria privately with the truth. Offer her a chance to choose differently. Risk that she'll use the warning to hide evidence and strengthen her defenses. 1 path was certain victory, but moral compromise. The other was uncertain, but honest. My father spent 2 years gathering evidence because he believed in truth and justice. Maya said slowly, not revenge, not cruelty. If I use this DNA test as a weapon, I'm choosing revenge. And maybe my family deserves revenge after 4 generations of suffering. But is that who I want to be? That's the question only you can answer, James said. Maya made her decision. We keep the DNA information as insurance, but we don't lead with it. We expose the thefts, the murders, the fraud. We prove Victoria is a criminal based on her actions, not her bloodline. If she's convicted, it won't matter whose daughter she is. She'll face justice either way. And if the evidence doesn't work, if the system protects her again, then we decide if we're willing to go nuclear. But we try the right way first. For my father, for my great-grandfather, for every family the Sinclairs destroyed. Maya closed the DNA file. We prove you can win without becoming a monster. James nodded. Okay, so what's next? Next, we assemble everyone. All the victims, all the witnesses, all the evidence. We build a case so overwhelming that even Chicago's corrupt system can't ignore it. And we do it publicly at a place where Victoria can't hide, where the whole city is watching. The Sinclair Foundation Spring Gala. James said, exactly. The 50th anniversary event. Maximum media coverage. Maximum witnesses. We expose her in her own house, surrounded by the people who've protected her. Maya smiled grimly. Let's see if the elite stand by a thief when the whole world is watching. Maya's apartment became war room headquarters. She'd pushed her furniture against the walls to make space for tables covered in evidence folders, laptops, and photographs. James arrived first, followed by 3 other victims' families Maya had tracked down through community networks. Kevin O'Brien, 45, security guard whose grandmother's Celtic ring was stolen in 2017. Maria Giordano, 62, former Art Institute restroom attendant whose family cameo was taken in 2018. Tom Whitfield, 52, maintenance worker whose father's vintage watch disappeared in 2016. And Margaret Wu, appearing via video call from her hospice bed, oxygen tubes visible. Thank you all for coming. Maya started. I know this is risky. I know you've all stayed silent because you were afraid or because the system failed you. But we have a chance now to get justice, not just for ourselves, but for every family the Sinclairs have destroyed. She spread out the evidence, the photographs, the audio recordings, the provenance documents, the financial records. 53 stolen heirlooms, multiple murders, 4 generations of systematic theft. This is everything my father gathered before they killed him. It's enough to prosecute Victoria Sinclair for theft, fraud, and potentially as an accessory to murder. But it only works if we present it publicly in a way that can't be buried or ignored. Kevin leaned forward. You're talking about the Spring Gala, the Sinclair Foundation's 50th anniversary event. 3 weeks from now, it'll be at the Palmer House Grand Ballroom. Every major media outlet will cover it. Politicians, museum directors, the city's elite, all in one room. Victoria will give a keynote speech about her family's legacy of philanthropy. Maya smiled coldly. We're going to interrupt that speech with the truth. How? Maria asked. Security will be insane. They'll never let us in. They will if we have press credentials. Maya gestured to her laptop. I contacted a journalist, Rachel Kim. She's been investigating corruption in Chicago's museum system for years. When I showed her our evidence, she agreed to help. She's bringing a camera crew as official media coverage. We'll be her assistants. James pulled up a floor plan of the ballroom. Here's the strategy. The gala has a charity auction as the main event. Rich people bidding on art and jewelry to support the Sinclair Foundation's cultural preservation initiatives. He laughed bitterly. The irony is amazing. Anyway, during the auction preview, we'll set up a display of our own. The 53 stolen heirlooms, documented with photographs and provenance records. We project them on the ballroom screens, Maya continued. Each item with the name of the family it was stolen from, the date, the police report number. We show Victoria's photos wearing these pieces at public events. Then we play my father's audio recordings. Harold Sinclair in his own voice, admitting to theft and threatening my father's life. Margaret's voice came through the video call. Victoria will try to shut it down immediately. Security, lawyers, police. She'll use everything. That's why we need media coverage, Maya said. Rachel Kim will live stream the entire confrontation. Once it's public, once thousands of people are watching in real time, Victoria can't make it disappear. She'll have to respond. Tom Whitfield raised a concern. What if she just denies everything? Claims the recordings are fake. The photos are manipulated. Then we have our witnesses. Maya gestured to everyone in the room. 5 families, all victims of the same pattern. Margaret Wu, former museum employee who saw Harold's operation firsthand. We don't just present evidence. We present people. Real faces, real stories. Harder to dismiss. And if that's not enough, Kevin asked, Maya thought about the DNA test locked in her encrypted files. The nuclear option. She'd promised herself she'd try the right way first. But if Victoria was protected even against overwhelming evidence. If it's not enough, we have contingencies, Maya said vaguely. But let's focus on what we can control. James outlined the timeline. 3 weeks to prepare. We need to coordinate with Rachel, finalize our presentation, prepare our statements, and arrange backup plans in case Victoria's security tries to remove us physically. About legal protection. Maria asked, if we do this, Victoria will sue us for defamation, slander, everything her lawyers can think of. We're presenting documented evidence at a public event, Maya said. That's protected speech. Yes, she'll probably sue anyway. But by then, the truth will be public. The lawsuits become part of the story. Billionaire trying to silence victims through legal intimidation. Rachel Kim joined the video call, her face appearing on Maya's laptop. I've confirmed media credentials for the gala. My crew and 3 assistants. That's Maya, James, and 1 more. The others will need to attend as guests or find another way in. I can get in, Kevin said. I still work security at events. I'll volunteer for the Sinclair Gala. I'll be inside already. I'll buy a ticket, Tom said. It's expensive, but this is worth it. Maria nodded. Me too. I've been saving. This is what I'm saving for. Margaret coughed, the sound painful. I won't be there physically, but I'll testify via video. I'll tell everything I witnessed, everything Harold did, everything I was too afraid to say for 27 years. Maya felt emotion rising. These people were risking everything. Their savings, their safety, their futures. All for justice that might not even come. If we do this, there's no going back, Maya said. Victoria will destroy us if we fail. She'll use her money and power to make our lives hell. We could lose jobs, homes, face legal battles we can't afford. Are you all sure? They looked at each other. Kevin spoke first. My grandmother died never knowing what happened to her ring. She thought she lost it, blamed herself. I'm sure. My family believed we weren't worthy of the heirlooms we carried, Maria said. That losing them proved we didn't deserve nice things. I'm sure. Tom nodded. I'm sure. Margaret's voice came through weak, but determined. I'm dying. I have nothing left to lose, and everything to make right. I'm sure. James met Maya's eyes. Your father died for this. I'm sure. Maya pulled out her phone. She'd been avoiding this call for 5 years. But it was time. She dialed the Oregon number from the letter in the storage unit. The phone rang 3 times. Then a woman's voice, familiar but aged. Hello? Mom. Maya's voice cracked. It's me. It's Maya. Silence. Then crying. Maya? Oh God, Maya, is it really? It's me, Mom. I know what happened. I know why you left. And I know you've been watching from Portland, sending money. I forgive you, and I need your help. Anything. What do you need? I'm going after the Sinclairs. I'm finishing what Dad started. And I need to know you'll be okay if something happens to me. I need to know someone will tell the truth even if I can't. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. I'm getting on a plane tonight. I'm coming to Chicago. We do this together. Maya smiled through tears. Together. I'll see you soon, Mom. She hung up and looked at her team. 3 weeks. We prepare, we execute. And we end the Sinclair's reign. For our families. For the truth. For everyone who was too afraid to fight back. They got to work. The plan was set. The stage was chosen. In 3 weeks at the Sinclair Foundation's 50th anniversary gala. The reckoning would begin. 3 weeks felt like 3 years. But the night finally arrived. The Palmer House Grand Ballroom glowed with the same crystal chandeliers, the same marble floors, the same wealth Maya remembered from that first night. Except tonight, everything was different. Maya walked through the entrance not in a server's uniform, but in a simple black dress. Rachel Kim stood beside her, press credentials hanging around her neck. James followed with camera equipment, officially Rachel's assistant. Kevin O'Brien was already inside, working security in his usual position. Maria and Tom had bought tickets, expensive as they were, and sat among the crowd of donors. Victoria Sinclair stood at the center of the ballroom, radiant in a champagne-colored gown. Around her neck, catching the light with every movement, was the necklace. Maya's necklace, her father's necklace, the Art Nouveau silver and sapphires that started this entire war. Maya touched the chain around her own neck. Her father's museum ID badge hung there. The photo showing Miguel Torres smiling in his curator uniform. She wore him like armor. You ready? Rachel whispered. I've been ready for 5 years. They moved through the crowd. Maya kept her head down at first, just another guest among 300. But Victoria's eyes found her anyway. Maya watched recognition flash across Victoria's face, followed by anger, then calculation. Victoria whispered to a security guard, who started moving toward Maya. But Rachel's camera crew shifted position, casually placing themselves between Maya and security. Other legitimate media crews were filming the event. Security couldn't make a scene without creating exactly the kind of attention Victoria wanted to avoid. The gala proceeded. Speeches about the Sinclair Foundation's 50 years of philanthropy. Stories about cultural preservation and supporting Chicago's artistic heritage. Every word felt like a live burning in Maya's throat. Then came the charity appeal. Victoria took the microphone, standing beneath the spotlight that made her necklace glow like captured stars. Tonight, we celebrate my family's commitment to preserving cultural heritage for future generations. My father believed that beautiful objects tell the stories of who we are and where we come from. That's why the Sinclair Foundation has donated millions to museums, archives, and cultural institutions across Chicago. Maya started walking, not running, not rushing. just walking with purpose toward the front of the room. People noticed. Heads turned. Victoria's smile faltered as she watched Maya approach. "I'd like to make a donation too," Maya said loudly, her voice carrying across the ballroom. Security moved toward her, but Rachel's crew was filming now. Other cameras turned. Victoria couldn't have Maya dragged out without looking like she was silencing a donor. "Excuse me." Victoria's voice was ice. Maya reached the auction table where a laptop connected to the ballroom's projection screens. James was already there, having positioned himself earlier. He handed Maya the control. "I want to donate something to tonight's auction. Evidence. Truth. Justice." Maya clicked the remote. The ballroom screens lit up with images. 53 pieces of jewelry, each one photographed in detail. Beneath each image, text appeared. The name of the original owner, the date it was stolen, the police report number, and a photograph of Victoria wearing that exact piece at various galas. Gasps rippled through the crowd. People pulled out phones, taking pictures of the screens. The Mexican silver necklace with turquoise inlay, stolen from Rosa Martinez in 2015. The Italian cameo brooch, stolen from Maria Giordano in 2018. The Celtic ring, stolen from Kevin O'Brien's grandmother in 2017. The jade bracelet, stolen from James Chen's grandmother in 2016. On and on. 53 stolen treasures, all documented, all worn publicly by Victoria Sinclair. Victoria's face went white. "This is absurd. These images are manipulated. This woman is a disturbed former employee who—" "My name is Maya Torres," Maya interrupted, her voice amplified by Rachel's microphone. "My father was Miguel Torres, a curator at the Chicago History Museum. 5 years ago, he discovered that Harold Sinclair had been stealing heirlooms from museum employees and their families for decades. He gathered evidence. He planned to expose the theft. And then he died. The police called it an accident, but it was murder." The ballroom exploded in whispers. Victoria's security surrounded her now, but the cameras were everywhere. There was no containing this. "You're insane," Victoria said. "Security, remove this woman immediately. Remove her and you remove all of us," a voice called out. Kevin O'Brien stepped forward, his security uniform making his presence powerful. "I'm Kevin O'Brien. That Celtic ring on your screen belonged to my grandmother. It disappeared after she worked a private event at your estate in 2017. I saw you wearing it at the Autumn Gala last year." Maria Giordano stood. "My family's cameo brooch. You wore it in 2019. I reported it stolen. Police did nothing." Tom Whitfield rose. "My father's vintage watch. Gone after a Sinclair Foundation event in 2016. One by one victims and their families stood. The invisible people Victoria had spent years stealing from. Now visible, now speaking, now refusing to be silent." Victoria looked around frantically. "This is a coordinated attack. These people are lying, trying to extort money from my family's foundation." "Then explain this," Maya said. She pressed play on the audio file. Harold Sinclair's voice filled the ballroom, crystal clear, undeniable. "Miguel, you need to understand that museums aren't about truth. They're about narrative control. The people who fund us get to decide which stories are told and which objects are worthy of display." Then Miguel's voice. "I found discrepancies in the provenance documents. These pieces aren't authentic. They're forgeries." Harold again. "Miguel, how old is your daughter now?" "Maya, right? Such a sweet girl. Would be a shame if something happened to her." The ballroom went silent. Every phone was recording now. Every camera focused on Victoria, whose face had gone from white to red. "That recording is fake," Victoria said, but her voice shook. "Deepfake technology, artificial." "No," another voice interrupted. An elderly Asian woman appeared on the projection screens via live stream. Oxygen tubes visible. Margaret Wu, speaking from her hospice bed. "I'm Margaret Wu. I worked at the Chicago History Museum from 1995 to 2010. I witnessed Harold Sinclair's steal artifacts, replaced them with forgeries, and threatened anyone who questioned him. I was too afraid to speak then, but I'm not afraid anymore. Everything Maya Torres says is true." Harold Sinclair was a thief and a murderer, and Victoria Sinclair has continued his crimes. Victoria's composure finally cracked. You don't understand. These people, they didn't appreciate what they had. They wore priceless heirlooms to work, treated them like costume jewelry. My family preserved these objects, elevated them, gave them the respect they deserved. They weren't yours to preserve, Maya said quietly. They were memories. They were family. They were proof that working-class people, immigrants, invisible people like us, we came from somewhere. We mattered. And you stole that from us because you thought your family's power gave you the right. The crowd's energy had shifted. People who'd applauded Victoria minutes ago now stared at her with horror. The mayor slipped toward an exit. Museum directors who'd celebrated the Sinclair Foundation suddenly found urgent reasons to check their phones. Victoria stood alone under that spotlight, her father's stolen necklace around her throat, surrounded by evidence of 4 generations of theft. And for the first time in her life, her power meant nothing. Victoria's lawyer appeared from somewhere in the crowd, whispering urgently in her ear. She nodded, seemed to gather herself, and turned back to the microphone with forced confidence. This is clearly a coordinated attack designed to damage my family's reputation and extort settlement money. My legal team will be filing defamation suits against everyone involved. These recordings, if they're even real, are taken out of context. My father was a respected businessman and philanthropist. The suggestion that he committed murder is slanderous and will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Maya had expected this. The denial, the threats, the attempt to use legal intimidation to silence victims. It was the Sinclair playbook, perfected over generations. Then explain this, Maya said. She clicked to the next image. Bank records appeared on the screens. Payments from Harold Sinclair to police officers. Cash withdrawals corresponding to dates when thefts were reported. Receipts from forgers who specialized in museum-quality replicas. Financial documents can be fabricated. Victoria's lawyer said quickly. Can testimony be fabricated? Maya clicked again. The screen showed a video recording. A police interview from 2020, marked as evidence file 2847B. The detective interviewing Margaret Wu about the museum thefts, her detailed testimony about Harold's operation, and the detective's note at the end. Witness credible, but case closed per order of Captain Rodriguez. Sinclair family not to be investigated. That's police corruption, not proof of theft, the lawyer argued. Then, let's talk about murder. Maya's voice went cold. She clicked to another file. Miguel Torres's autopsy report appeared on screen. My father's death was ruled accidental, but the medical examiner noted inconsistencies. Bruising on his arms, suggesting he was grabbed. A head wound inconsistent with a simple fall. Security footage mysteriously corrupted. And then there's this. A new image appeared. A memo from Harold Sinclair to his head of security, dated 3 days before Miguel's death. The Torres situation needs permanent resolution. Handle it discreetly. Ensure it looks accidental. Payment upon completion. The ballroom erupted. People shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Victoria's face went from confident to panicked. That document is fake. Victoria screamed. Someone created that to frame my father. I didn't create it, Maya said. Your father's own lawyer kept it, along with similar documents about 2 other deaths. A security guard in 2015, a housekeeper in 1998, all people who threatened to expose your father's collection, all conveniently dead in accidents, all documented in files your father kept as insurance against his own associates. Maya clicked through the evidence. 3 separate memos, 3 separate payoffs, 3 deaths, all ruled accidental, all connected to Harold Sinclair's theft operation. Margaret Wu's voice came through the speakers again. I was there when Harold threatened Miguel Torres. I heard him say that if Miguel exposed the forgeries, it wouldn't just be Miguel who suffered. It would be his family too. 2 weeks later, Miguel was dead, and Harold's assistant called me to say how lucky I was that I'd stayed out of it. Victoria looked around desperately for support, but the crowd had turned completely. Donors who'd arrived ready to celebrate were now backing away, creating physical distance between themselves and the Sinclair family scandal. My father may have made mistakes, Victoria said, her voice breaking now. But I've done nothing wrong. I inherited jewelry from my family. If some of those pieces had questionable origins, I didn't know. You can't hold me responsible for. You wore my father's necklace 2 months after he died, Maya said. You knew exactly where it came from. You've continued stealing. For new thefts since your father's death in 2020. You didn't just inherit his collection. You inherited his pathology. James stepped forward now. My grandmother's jade bracelet. She described it to me 100 times before she died. Dragons and phoenixes carved in green jade so pure it glowed. She reported it stolen in 1999 after working an event at your estate. You wore it to the autumn gala last October. I saw it, recognized it immediately. Victoria's lawyer pulled her aside, whispered urgently. Victoria shook her head, pushed him away, and suddenly all the calculated control vanished. The mask fell completely. You want to know the truth? Victoria's voice rose, sharp and angry. These people didn't deserve these treasures. They wore priceless cultural artifacts to work, like cheap costume jewelry. They had no appreciation for their value, their history, their significance. My family preserved these objects. We elevated them. We gave them the respect and care they deserved. Yes, we took them, but we saved them from being lost to carelessness and ignorance. The crowd recoiled. Someone gasped. Victoria had just confessed to theft on camera, recorded by dozens of phones. These families were working-class immigrants who didn't understand what they had, Victoria continued, her voice getting louder. My family has the education, the resources, the sophistication to properly care for cultural treasures. We didn't steal. We rescued. We preserved. We protected these objects from people too ignorant to appreciate them. Maya felt cold fury rise in her chest. My great-grandfather carried that necklace across an ocean with nothing else to his name. It represented everything he'd survived, everything he'd sacrificed, everything he'd dreamed of building in America. And your great-grandfather stole it along with his entire future. 4 generations later, you're still taking from families like mine because you think your wealth and education make you superior. You think being a Sinclair gives you the right to decide whose memories matter. It does, Victoria said simply. Power gives rights. My family has power. These people don't. That's reality. The crowd was silent now, shocked by the naked elitism and cruelty. Then a new voice spoke. Victoria Sinclair? A man in his 60s approached from the back of the ballroom. Gray hair, weathered face, dressed in a simple suit. He held up a badge. I'm Marcus Hull. I was a detective with the Chicago Police Department from 1995 to 2022. I investigated your father's activities multiple times. I was ordered to close those investigations by my superiors who were on your father's payroll, but I kept my own evidence files. Everything I was told to ignore or destroy. And as of this morning, I filed a formal request to reopen the investigation into Miguel Torres's death as a homicide. I've submitted all my evidence to the FBI, outside Chicago's corrupted system. Victoria stumbled backward. Her security team looked at each other, uncertain. Her lawyer grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward an exit. I also brought friends, Detective Hall said. 3 people in FBI windbreakers entered the ballroom. Victoria Sinclair, you're not under arrest yet, but we have questions. Lots of questions. And unlike Chicago PD, we don't answer to your family's money. Victoria looked around wildly. The exits were blocked by media. The crowd was recording everything. Her lawyer whispered urgently about constitutional rights and remaining silent. But it was too late. Victoria had confessed on camera. Dozens of witnesses had testified. Evidence was overwhelming. The invisible people she'd spent her life stealing from had become undeniably visible. And the Sinclair empire, built on 4 generations of theft and murder, was crumbling in real time. Victoria Sinclair collapsed into a chair, her champagne gown pooling around her like spilled wealth. Her hands shook. Her perfectly styled hair had come loose. The necklace at her throat caught the light. And for the first time, Maya saw Victoria look at it like it was burning her skin. Security didn't know what to do. Protect Victoria from the FBI? From the media? From the angry crowd? They stood uselessly as everything fell apart. Maya felt the flash drive in her pocket. The DNA test. Victoria's biological parentage. The secret that could destroy Victoria's identity completely. Reduce her from a Sinclair to the daughter of a Mexican gardener. The ultimate revenge. She thought about her great-grandfather, Diego Rodriguez, betrayed by his partner and left with nothing. Her father, Miguel Torres, murdered for seeking truth. For generations of her family destroyed by Sinclair cruelty. This was her chance, not just to expose Victoria's crimes, but to annihilate her identity, to prove that Victoria had no right to the Sinclair name, no claim to the wealth and power she'd wielded so viciously. The elite crowd that protected her would turn instantly if they knew she wasn't really one of them. Maya's hand moved toward her pocket. Then she looked at Victoria's face. Victoria wasn't looking at the FBI agents or the cameras or the crowd. She was staring at the screens, still displaying the stolen heirlooms. And Maya saw something she didn't expect. Not shame, not guilt, but something broken. Something that had been broken a long time ago. Victoria had been raised by a monster, taught that power meant taking, that empathy was weakness, that some people existed only to be exploited. She'd been fed lies about her identity, trained to hate people like her real father, groomed to continue a legacy of cruelty. That didn't excuse her crimes, but it explained them. Maya thought about what James had said weeks ago. Using Victoria's parentage against her makes us like them. She thought about her father teaching her that the necklace was proof we came from somewhere, that we mattered. Would exposing Victoria's Mexican heritage as a weapon say that Mexican heritage was shameful? That working-class blood disqualified you from respect? Maya removed her hand from her pocket. Detective Hall approached her. Ms. Torres, you've presented compelling evidence. We'll need all your files for the federal investigation. Maya handed him a USB drive. Everything's there. Financial records, audio recordings, provenance documents, witness testimony. 53 counts of theft. Evidence of 3 murders. Bribery, fraud, conspiracy. It's all documented. What about this? The detective held up another USB drive Maya had prepared. The one containing the DNA test. Maya looked at Victoria one more time. That drive has information about Victoria's personal history that isn't relevant to the criminal investigation. Family secrets that don't prove guilt or innocence. I'm choosing not to include it in the evidence. James stood beside her. You sure? I'm sure. My father taught me that truth and justice aren't the same as revenge. Victoria needs to face justice for what she's done. But some cruelties don't serve justice. They just create more pain. The detective nodded and pocketed only the criminal evidence drive. You are a better person than most people would be in your position. My father was a better person than most. I'm trying to be his daughter. The FBI agents moved toward Victoria, who looked up with hollow eyes. Her lawyer stepped between them. My client will cooperate fully with any official investigation, but she's not answering questions tonight without proper legal representation. Understood, one agent said. But Ms. Sinclair should know that based on the evidence presented here tonight and the confessions she made on camera, we'll be seeking indictments for theft, fraud, conspiracy, and potentially accessory to murder. She should not leave Chicago. Victoria said nothing. She just sat there, staring at nothing, the necklace around her throat like a noose. A police officer approached Maya. Ms. Torres, we need to remove the evidence from Ms. Sinclair. That necklace you identified, if it's stolen property, it needs to be secured. Maya's heart jumped. After 5 years, after her father's death, after everything. The officer approached Victoria. Miss Sinclair, I need you to remove the necklace. Victoria's hands moved to the clasp. They trembled. For a moment, Maya thought she might refuse, might make them forcibly remove it. But then the crescent moon clasp clicked open. That distinctive sound Maya remembered from childhood. And Victoria held the necklace out like it was poisonous. The officer took it carefully and walked to Maya. Ms. Torres, we'll need to hold this as evidence during the investigation, but it's documented as belonging to your family. Once the case is resolved, it will be returned to you. Maya held out her hands. The officer placed the necklace in her palms. It was heavier than she remembered, cold from Victoria's skin. The silver had tarnished slightly from years of wear, but it was here, real. Hers again. She found the maker's mark on the crescent moon clasp. J.R. Jose Rodriguez. And there on the left side, the tiny dent from when her father dropped it in 2015. Every detail exactly as she remembered. Maya closed her hands around it and felt her father's presence. Not his ghost, just his memory, his love, his belief that truth mattered, that working-class families deserved dignity, that invisible people were worth fighting for. "Thank you," she whispered to the officer. Around them, the gala had transformed into chaos. Donors fleeing, media swarming for interviews, museum directors issuing frantic statements. The mayor's spokesperson already crafting damage control. The Chicago elite who'd protected the Sinclairs for generations, now desperate to distance themselves from a scandal. Kevin O'Brien approached Maya, tears in his eyes. "My grandmother's ring. They're going to return my grandmother's ring." Maria Giordano hugged her daughter. "Your great-grandmother's cameo. We're getting it back." Tom Whitfield just stood there crying quietly, overwhelmed. One by one, the 53 families represented in the evidence would reclaim their stolen heritage. Objects they thought were lost forever. Memories they believed were gone. Proof that their ancestors' sacrifices mattered. Maya's mother appeared from the crowd. Elena Torres, who'd been hiding in Oregon for 5 years, too afraid to come home. She looked older than Maya remembered, worn down by guilt and exile. But she was here. "Mija," Elena said, her voice breaking. "Your father would be so proud." Maya hugged her mother for the first time in 5 years. "He loved you, Mom, even after you left. He understood why. I should have stayed. I should have fought with him. You were protecting me. He knew that. I know that now." Maya pulled back. "We're going to be okay. It's going to take time. It's going to be awkward and painful. But we're going to rebuild." Rachel Kim approached with her camera crew. "Maya, can we get an interview? The story's going viral. National media is picking up. You're trending on every platform." Maya looked at the necklace in her hands, at the crowd of families who'd found their voices, at her mother standing beside her for the first time in years, at Victoria Sinclair sitting alone, abandoned by the system that had protected her, facing justice she'd thought she'd never see. "Yes," Maya said. "Let's tell the story. Let's tell all of it. Not just about the Sinclairs. About every family they destroyed. Every invisible person they thought didn't matter. Let's make sure the world sees us." The interview lasted an hour. Maya told everything. Her great-grandfather's betrayal. Her father's murder. The 4 generations of theft. The 53 stolen heirlooms. The system that protected wealth and punished poverty. The courage it took for working-class families to speak up against untouchable power. And when it was over, when the cameras finally stopped rolling and the crowd began to disperse, Maya stood alone in that ballroom, holding her father's necklace. The Palmer House Grand Ballroom, where this had started 3 months ago, where she'd been invisible, where she'd made the choice to speak up and risk everything. She wasn't invisible anymore. None of them were. 6 months later, Maya Torres walked through the staff entrance of the Chicago History Museum wearing a curator's badge with her name embossed in gold. The same museum where her father had worked, the same position he'd held, the dream he'd had for her, finally real. The museum had undergone massive changes. The board of directors had been entirely replaced after investigations revealed decades of corruption tied to the Sinclair family. New leadership meant new priorities: provenance verification, ethical acquisition, protection of cultural heritage. And Maya's first project was creating a new department dedicated to exactly that. Victoria Sinclair had pled guilty to 17 counts of theft, 4 counts of fraud, and conspiracy charges related to her father's crimes. Her lawyers had managed to minimize the charges. The murder charges against Harold couldn't be proven beyond reasonable doubt with him dead, though Detective Hall's evidence confirmed the investigations had been corrupt. Victoria received 5 years in prison with possibility of parole in 3. But the real punishment was everything else. The Sinclair Foundation had dissolved, its assets liquidated to compensate the 53 families. Victoria's penthouse was sold, her collection auctioned, her social standing destroyed. The Chicago elite, who'd celebrated her now, pretended they'd never known her well. She was erased from charity boards, museum donor walls, society pages. The empire built on 4 generations of theft crumbled in 6 months. Maya's mother, Elena, had moved back to Chicago. They had dinner every Sunday at the house in Oak Park where Maya's father had raised her. It was awkward sometimes, painful. 23 years of separation couldn't heal overnight. But they were trying, sharing memories of Miguel, building new memories together, learning to be a family again. James Chun had used his settlement money from the Sinclair assets to start a nonprofit, Reclaimed Heritage. The organization helped working-class families, immigrants, and their descendants track down stolen cultural property and navigate the legal systems to recover it. 15 families had already recovered heirlooms thought lost forever. Kevin O'Brien's grandmother's Celtic ring had been returned to his family. They'd held a ceremony honoring his grandmother's memory. Kevin wore the ring now on a chain, just like Maya wore the necklace. Maria Giordano's family cameo was back where it belonged. She'd cried for an hour, holding it, remembering her great-grandmother. All 53 families had been made whole, at least materially. The emotional wounds would take longer to heal, but they had their heritage back, their proof that they mattered. Margaret Wood passed away peacefully 2 weeks after the gala. Her last words shared with Maya via phone call were, "Thank you for having the courage I didn't. Thank you for making the silence end." Her funeral had been attended by all 53 families. They called her a hero. Finally, Maya wore the necklace every day, not hidden under her shirt like her father had done, protecting it, but openly, visibly, a statement. She wore it not for a wedding day, as her father had promised. She wore it as armor, as memory, as proof that invisible people could become undeniable. Maya stood in the museum's new Immigrant Heritage Wing, installing the final piece of the exhibit, Stolen Heritage, Reclaimed Justice. The display case held her family's necklace, the Art Nouveau silver and sapphires gleaming under museum lights. The placard read, "This necklace belonged to Diego Rodriguez, who carried it from Spain to Chicago in 1889. It was stolen from his family by business partner Harold Sinclair Sr. through fraud and betrayal. 4 generations later, Diego's great-great-granddaughter, Maya Torres, recovered it and exposed a century of systematic theft targeting working-class immigrant families. This necklace represents not just one family's heirloom, but the courage of 53 families who refused to stay invisible." Maya touched the glass, seeing her reflection merge with the necklace's gleam. "My father taught me that invisible people see everything," Maya said softly, her voice recorded for the exhibit's audio tour. "The powerful forget we're watching, counting, remembering, waiting. This necklace isn't just silver and sapphires. It's 4 generations of silence breaking. It's proof that truth doesn't need power to exist, only courage to speak." She paused, thinking of her father, of Diego Rodriguez, of all the families who'd suffered. "Some days I wonder if it was worth the cost. Then I touch this glass and see my father's face reflected next to mine. And I know, we don't inherit just objects from our families. We inherit their unfinished fights, and some fights are worth finishing." Maya stepped back, looking at the complete exhibit. 53 heirlooms returned. 53 stories told. 53 families finally seen. "What stolen truths are you carrying?" she asked, addressing the future visitors who'd stand where she stood now. "What silences need breaking? What fights need finishing? Share your stories. Tell your truth. The invisible deserve to be seen. And sometimes being seen is the first step to being free." The museum lights dimmed slightly as evening approached. The necklace caught the changing light, the crescent moon clasp gleaming one last time before the wing closed for the night. Maya walked out of the museum into the Chicago evening. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Dinner at 6. Making your father's empanadas. Come hungry." Maya smiled. She responded, "I'll be there." 4 generations of theft. 4 generations of silence. 1 generation of courage to break it all open. The Sinclair empire was gone. The stolen heirlooms were home. The invisible people were finally visible. And Maya Torres walked through Chicago streets wearing her father's museum badge, carrying his memory, continuing his work. Some fights were worth finishing. This one was done. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it. Drop a comment telling me What fight you think is worth finishing? Your story matters. Your voice matters. And together, we make the invisible undeniable. Hit subscribe. And let's keep telling the truths that powerful people want buried.